Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman Sterling, and thank you, committee members, for your time. I appreciate you allowing public input, community input on these type of issues involving public safety. I'll keep it brief, as I know I only have 3 minutes, and I want to be respectful for everybody's time. My name is Sharif Hidayat. I'm a resident of Laytonsville. I've lived in Montgomery County all my life. I've been a police officer. I just retired as a police officer after 23 years on the police department. And the majority of my time was in community relations in the 4th District as a community service officer. And I have some experience and some knowledge about the structure of the police department, the needs of the community, and most importantly, can tell you if a program is meeting the intended goal, such as the speed camera program. And I want to narrow the focus to that tonight with my testimony. The speed camera in its present form is a revenue generating program that has not contributed to the county's Vision Zero goals. On the contrary, our county executive even recently stated that we went from 11 pedestrian deaths in 2021 to 42 deaths in 2022. I think that's a little bit unfair to actually even cite that statistic because we were dealing with a pandemic, and obviously during the pandemic, traffic related statistics are going to be somewhat skewed, but what we can't ignore is that even the county's own data, it says county roadway fatalities down compared to 2010. 2021 was the pandemic. You're not going to have as many people on the road, but if you do take the aggregate of 2010 to 2020, as the graph reflects, this is the county's own statistics, it clearly shows, despite the fact that the speed camera program was implemented in 2009, 10-year aggregate information shows that we're no better now than we were in 2010. So everybody can objectively look at the county's own statistics about fatality rates, and it's up and down. And we even peaked in 2015. It shows there was a spike. But overall, if you look at this data, it just shows from 2010 to 2020, it's a zero-sum game. And my concern is that we keep selling this as a program that is going to reduce the amount of fatalities on our roadway when the data clearly shows not. The other issues I have with this program is the locations are not transparent. If you go onto the county website, I know they did it with good intent, don't get me wrong. I just feel like the technology to actually show where these cameras are being placed is not good enough. If you geolocate where the dots are on the map, they do not actually reflect exactly where these cameras are. It gets the general vicinity, but it really doesn't pinpoint where these cameras are so people can slow down. Also, Susan, real quick, do you have a picture of the sign that I just sent, the email with the sign? Can we bring that slide up as well?
Hold on just a minute. I have not checked my email.
Oh, I'm sorry. In the meantime, while you're looking for that, the list of locations are not updated, and you can fact check me on this. I worked in District 4. I know on Russet Road in District 4, in the 5200 block of Russet Road, there's a speed camera there. There's a speed camera in Rock Creek, in front of Rock Creek Valley Elementary School, but our database doesn't show those streets. Okay.
Your time has expired. Do any members of the commission have a question? I see Robin is seeking recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my question is about this chart. I'm afraid I don't really understand how it supports your argument. Maybe I'm just not understanding it. The chart appears to show that pretty much every year since 2010, there's been a downward tick in fatal crashes. I mean, this chart shows the percentage change, I guess, from 2010, but it's still mostly, pretty much every data point here shows a decline. Perhaps it would have been easier to just look at the actual numbers. That might have made it clearer.
Well, if you look at 2015, it's above 0%.
Right, but that's
if you look at 2010 and compare it to 2020, we're at the same level. Do you see what I'm saying? While we
Yeah.
may have taken dips up and down,
Yeah.
yes, you are correct on the data points.
Yeah.
However, there is no difference between the 0% in 2010
Right,
and
right,
0% in 2020.
Okay, I understand it now. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Robin. That was very helpful. Are there other questions for Mr. Hidayat?
Hi, this is Chris Tippery from Montgomery County Police Automated Traffic Enforcement. I understand some of the data that he might be looking at, but factually, as being the director of automated enforcement,
You're recognized, Christopher.
thank you. In 2016, for speed enforcement, we issued 522,006 citations. In 2021, because we don't have the data for 2022, we issued 234,142 citations. So since 2016, that's a reduction in 203,673 speed citations. Also in 2016, we issued 71,819 red light citations. Currently in November, we issued 21,852. Again, that's a difference of 484 citations for red light. So as you can see, the program is working as designed. We're issuing less citations every day. And as far as posting the information, the map that he's referring to on the county's website is kind of an added benefit. State law requires, excuse me, that we post every location in Montgomery County in a general paper of general circulation, which it was. It was posted in the Washington Post in April of 2002 as a insert. And those locations are also on the website.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. What did Mr. Ricks? Mr. Ricks, you're seeking recognition.
Yes, okay. I'm sorry. I'm just wondering what the point of this presentation was. If you're saying that traffic enforcement is revenue generating only, and we know that, I mean, you were in District 4, and District 4 is around the Wheaton area and all of that. And there had been several incidents in that area. So I'm just wondering, and I know that they have, that they came up early on with the program called corridors, speed corridors. And like Georgia Avenue and in Silver Spring and those areas, and some areas, other places in the county. So can you help me just to understand what it is that are you saying? That you don't want revenue generating, or the speed cameras are not effective, or what is the point?
Mr. Ricks, thank you very much. Mr. Hidayat, let me give you another minute then to clarify your presentation, if that's okay.
Sure. The correlation is I don't believe that the speed has any direct correlation with the reduction of fatal accidents in Montgomery County. That's my point about this whole thing. The biggest reason why we have traffic accidents in Montgomery County, and in anywhere for that matter, is distracted driving. Speed might be a contributing factor. Yes, I'll agree with that, because it reduces reaction time. But the main reason why people are getting into accidents are either because they're under the influence, they haven't followed the right of way laws, they haven't yielded to the oncoming traffic, they're distracted driver, and in the end, they've taken their eyes off the road. It's not, the primary reason is not because of speed. That's the point I'm making, and I think that there's the data points on the slide that I showed, which was county issued, shows exactly what I'm saying. There is no direct correlation between speed cameras and the reduction of fatal accidents in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. Hidayat. Commissioner Daphnis.
I would just note that NHTSA data does show that speed reduction does reduce fatalities. I think the more appropriate data to look at here might be the overall crashes, not just the fatal crashes. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin, were you seeking recognition again?
Yes, just very briefly, I wondered if Mr. Tippery could share the traffic data over the years since the traffic, whether you could share the automated traffic data you just referenced for all of the years since 2016 or whenever it was introduced.
Dr. Gaster, I think what we'll do is we will ask the police department, some specific questions for follow-up. Obviously, there'll be a number of issues.
Good.
We will, if you make a note of them,
yeah.
We'll submit them. We appreciate his bringing that to us at this time. Commissioner Dillane?
Yes, thank you. I would like the picture that you did not get to speak on, we did see it, but I wanted to know how that ties into your stance right now so that I can have a full picture of where you are, what you're trying to present to us.
Sure, that when you drive around the county, whether it be overgrowth of street signs or on Norbeck Road, for example, it took somebody who was in the nonprofit world to convince the county that they needed to move a sign that was completely obscuring the speed warning sign for the speed limit by another sign, that we need to have more due diligence on when we decide when I say we, when the county decides or the state decides to put up a sign, to ensure that the maintenance of that sign is clear to the motorist, that there is a speed enforcement camera on that road, or if you're going to put photo enforced, at least let it be legible so that people can have a fighting chance.
Good point. I think all of us have seen our favorite sign problem at different places obscured by one thing or another. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Very helpful discussion, and Mr. Hidayat, thank you so much for your testimony. Our next witness is Thomas Didone, former commander, I think, for traffic with the Montgomery County Police Department. We're delighted that Commander Didone is sought to be a witness this evening.
Hello, Mr. Sterling. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I more or less saw that traffic was being discussed, so seeing a lot of familiar faces with Vernon and Christie and representatives of law enforcement, I just wanted to thank you for all the efforts. I read your report. Of course, I would disagree with the findings of the PAC, but we know that Captain Dillman and Mr. Tippery are running the traffic division, and they're here and they do care. They carried the same high values that Chief Jones had bestowed on me, and we do care about traffic safety as well as the concerns of our community. So I know that they will continue to work forward. If you have any question about the data regarding the report that was done by OLO, Captain Satinsky, who's on here, is our data expert. He did drill down into the different aspects of the data. Mr. Sharif showed data, but I don't think his data was right on point. You can make data say anything that you want. I think it's important to show where the cameras were, as Ms. Daphne pointed out. We have shown reductions in crashes. We have data that shows that. You can't take overarching countywide data and apply it to an individual program because we don't have cameras on every road. That's an apples to oranges comparison. It just doesn't work. But rest assured, Montgomery County Police Department does care. We are not a discriminatory agency, but we will work with the community in their perspective and try to improve our performance every day. And finally, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Ricks, who was one of the founding members of the speed camera program. His efforts helped us build the program to the qualities that we do currently deployed today.
Commander Didone, thank you so much for your testimony. Are there members who would like to be recognized? I see Mr. Ricks and then Ms. Daphnis.
Thank you, and thank you, Tom. Good to hear you still involved. We had, you know, in early years even, I know that there was a lot of studies done to for corridors and where we needed to place cameras and all of that. Can you just very briefly talk about that?
Yes, very, very simply. When we built this program, we worked with AAA, we worked with a citizens advisory group, because we wanted to build a program that would be supported by the community. And what we decided is this one would have to be a data-driven program. So before a camera is placed on any roadway, a series of criteria that was established by the Citizens Advisory Committee must be looked at and addressed, which includes factors not only on speed limits and roadway, but crashes, pedestrian-related factors. And, you know, the purpose of this was to be able to defend the placement of every camera. And to this day, Mr. Tippery maintains this criteria is on our website, and Mr. Tippery does continue to uphold that that program and those policy decisions, because we want to be able to defend why we place them. There's some other jurisdictions around the metro area that do not have integrity in their program, but we wanted to make sure by using the Citizens Advisory, information from AAA, and research we had from programs that were successful and failed, that we wanted to build a model program for the nation. And I believe our program still is a model program in the nation.
Thank you, Commander. Commissioner Daphnis.
Hi, Captain Didone or Commander Didone. It's good to see you or hear you. Just if you could give like a 30-second view, all of the data, like the OLO data and stuff aside, what is your like 30-second view on just expansion of speed camera programs in general, assuming that the same, you know, integrity is upheld with the criteria?
I believe we have proven that if we use this same data set and these still criteria, that I think we could be more effective if we deployed our cameras now in the 40, 45 mile an hour speed limit, staying on arterial roadways. We know that the higher the speeds, the higher likely of a pedestrian or a vulnerable user fatality, including bicycles. We knew we had to prove that we had a program with integrity. So we wanted to maintain that program with the 35 mile an hour speed limit we were pioneered with when we started the program. But I think if we want to be able to change behavior on our arterial roadways to increase our effectiveness on vulnerable user crashes and other high-speed crashes that could lead to fatal crashes, then expanding this program in our residential arterial roadways on road speeds of 40 and 45, as long as we maintain this criteria for data-driven approach, would be a good thing for the county's benefit in the long run.
Commissioner Daphnis, was that adequate? Did you have follow-up?
I think that covers it. I guess maybe just one quick additional question. There is a proposal, or there will be a proposal by some to reduce the speed limit for where cameras can be allowed. And any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, Montgomery County is the only county in the state who is authorized to place cameras outside of school zones. And I would think that you would, we have demonstrated that these cameras had effect. And I think if we start minimizing the locations that we can put these cameras, we start minimizing the effect of these cameras. Although we have we have the authorization to expand the number of cameras we put on the roadways. Mr. Tippery and Captain Dillman have been very respectful and try to limit the growth of the program so the community doesn't feel like they're overwhelmed. So with that being said, I would look towards being able to use this tool in more places rather than less.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Gaster.
My question actually was mostly asked by Ms. Daphnis, but I guess I would probe a little bit harder. We recommended in our report that you expand the program significantly. And I guess if you have authorization, what's holding you back?
Well, one of the biggest issues, and I'll let Mr. Tippery, since he is more actively involved in it, but one of the largest issues is most of the locations that we go to install these cameras, we have to do our studies, but they're on state roadways. And state highway has this very long, drug out process that includes engineering designs and evaluations. And so to get a approval for a permit to place these cameras, working with the state can take 6 months or a year. I remember just trying to get the camera on Route 355 near Pooks Hill Road, where citizens and council members were really wearing me out about getting this, fighting the state. And it wasn't until I said, okay, I give up, help. And, we finally got the permit approved. So there's a little bit of politics involved. And then we have to make sure that we put the cameras where the data shows they're needed. Because once we put them there's a big competition for the cameras. Everybody wants them in their neighborhood, but nobody wants to drive by them. So we promised the community, with Mr. Ricks being on the committee, that we would only put them in places where the data showed they were necessary. So although we will expand the program, and I know Chris and Brian will, they're trying to do it in a measured approach. So we do it responsibly, because you can't put the genie back in the bottle once you put it out. And once you start putting it in places where it's not defensible, then it becomes everybody wants one, and then we can't defend it. Because where traditional enforcement fails is police officers can't go out and work the roadway effectively enough times to change behaviors. These cameras do, but we have to be very careful about how we place them, because once we place them, we have to solve the problem before we move it out of the program. There's been very few roadways that have been declared victories. But in the bottom half of Connecticut Avenue from Kensington to 495, I know for 20 years, Bethesda Traffic tries to slow down speeding on that roadway and never succeeded. They could go there any day and write 10, 15, 20 tickets. Now with the speed cameras there, moving them around, it works. And we have made that a safer stretch of the road. And we have segments of that on Montgomery Village Avenue and different parts of the county where the cameras have worked. So we want to continue that program.
Thank you. Let me recognize Vice Chairman Kinney for a question or comment.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although most of my questions have already been answered, I was just curious as to how often is the data that's collected evaluated, and does anyone know specifically on average the speed that may make you determine whether or not a camera needs to stay in place or be moved to another location?
Is that question perhaps directed to Mr. Tippery or to Captain
That's
Dillman?
directed to Mr. Didone or any other of the police officers or captains or whomever is online right now that can answer it.
In Montgomery County, we have an analyst that's assigned to the speed camera program from the vendor. And Mr. Tippery, at his discretion, can pull speed data. I did speed data on an annual basis when I was running the program and looked at the effectiveness of the cameras and compared to see if we were making it, because back then we had a limited number of them. And if they were no longer needed, although we rotate them every few weeks, every month generally, if we could then move them to a different location, we tried to use that data. But annually, I tried to do some kind of overarching analysis. But when COVID hit, all the resources and all the planning kind of changed. So I don't know what Mr. Tippery has inherited, but that data can be analyzed when it is pulled and evaluate the camera's effectiveness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Ricks?
Yes, sir, very quickly. I just wanted to make the point that when we were looking at where to place cameras, I call them the munchkins because wherever you put them, they would gobble you up. And we wanted to make sure that we did not put them only in certain ethnic neighborhoods. And that because they don't recognize black, white, or purple. All they know is that the car went past them 11 miles over the speed limit. And so that was one of the criteria that I was looked at in when we replaced the cameras.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. If there are no further questions for Commander Didone, we're very grateful for taking the time this evening to join us and provide your comments and to respond to our questions. I'd like to recognize now Stephen.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Chief.
Okay, good evening. I appreciate the PAC allowing me to speak just for a few minutes. And I've heard much of the discussion, many of the issues that many of the citizens have raised around traffic enforcement. Some interesting conversation, and I think we all take this to heart. I think similarly to retired Assistant Chief Tom Didone, his statements that he made, who, as we all know, has been a very big advocate for traffic enforcement and traffic safety. And that's one of the things I really wanted to make sure that those that are listening in tonight that understand that much of what we have focused on over the past couple of years in our traffic division with the new centralized traffic unit has been to focus on data driven enforcement on our major arterial roadways. That also we are in the expansion of our speed camera program, as I know that many on the commission are aware of. But I also wanted to note that as we look at these issues, that we are suffering significant decreases in our overall numbers of police officers. We're about 125 officers down below our complemented numbers, which is unprecedented for our department over the past few years. We are working on some additional strategies. And as we look at, the many issues that we center around, particularly pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, as well as our vehicles on our roadways. I know it was noted earlier about some of the statistics around the pandemic. And as we noticed that even during the pandemic, when there were not as many vehicles on our roadways, what we also realized was the fact that we had significant increases in complaints about speeding, drag racing, all throughout the county. That also that impacted many of our collisions, as well as impacted our fatal crashes along the way. And so, as we have these conversations about traffic safety, and we want to make sure people understand that there are more than just the one simple cause as to why there are crashes. There are causes such as their speed is the number one cause. I know I think Sharif Hidayat had noted some information that I think was a little bit misdirected, but I know where he was going. But I will tell you that speed is really the #1 issue that we see when it comes to many of our traffic collisions. The inability to avoid a collision, and that is, again, by driving too fast for the conditions. We also noted there's also other, the fail to yield a right of way on many turns. And again, we know that distracted driving is still a major issue, as well as DUIs. We had a large increase of DUIs during the holiday season. And in fact, during that holiday season, we had 5 police cruisers struck while officers were out doing enforcement efforts in the county to keep DUIs off of our roadways. So our officers are really challenged in that regard. Again, with the lack of officers that, with a reduction of officers now, sometimes warrant our, though we may have a desire to go out and do traffic safety, there are times when we have to, again, our first and priority is to be there to answer our calls for service as directed for each district, and to be there to respond to 911 and non-emergency calls along the way. And those will also include traffic issues that are centered in our particular communities. So, again, I appreciate everyone's efforts. We again want to work with this commission. I will tell you that again, we have more fatals in this county than we have homicides. And traffic safety is something that, again, we're not a one type of community. For example, we're not just all urban. We're a combination of being an urban community, a suburban community, as well as when you move into more up county areas where speeds are higher, we become a more rural area community. And that requires different types of enforcement, education, as we work with our communities to maintain traffic safety all throughout the county. That, again, that makes it not necessarily a one-stop shop or one program that we have. So again, I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak this evening, and I am willing to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you very much, Chief. Are there, before I recognize Mr. Ricks, Mr. McKinney, Mr. Gaster, Ms. Daphnis, are there any questions directed at Chief Jones and his comments? Christy, Daphnis?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Chief Jones, I know that the operating budget and other things for the county are coming up here. And I'm curious what your priorities are and how you are kind of prioritizing this type of work in the budget. And if there's anything that we can do as a commission to help support that.
Yes, I think that there are issues that have been talked about tonight in the increase of speed cameras, which we've already have included in our recent speed camera program and red light camera program. That's already included in that particular contract. But what I do want to do is continue to work collectively, not just individually as the police department, but to work with other agencies, particularly in our Vision Zero program, with Mr. Wade Holland being the director of that, to work with the Department of Transportation on some re-engineering in certain roadways. And this is why we're really working hard in some of the work that we're doing in our centralized traffic unit to come up with these new ideas of strategies of improvements to increase safety on these roadways. And it may come down to that there needs to be some budgetary commitments that may need to be made in order to improve these roadways. But I think we collectively have to really look at that data and then come to agreements across the board about what do we think are some of the best practices and some of the best options that we can have to not just, again, not to focus it on simple police enforcement, because that's not always our goal. We want to be able to get our community to really abide by whether we need to lower speed limits, increase signage, whatever the case may be, or to change the structure of our roadways to get them to understand, again, understanding that many of our roadways are turning in from necessarily a suburban roadway and now into more of an urban roadway with more pedestrians, more bikes that are now on our roadways. And we need to really have a solid plan moving forward. And we're willing to work with the council as well as, again, the county executive in order to do that.
Thank you, Chief Jones. Thank you, Commissioner Daphnis. Any additional questions for Chief Jones? Chief, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Rick, you're recognized.
Chairman Sterling, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I think I'd be remiss as the director of our traffic operation division if I just didn't make a few comments.
No, we're eager to have your comments.
I appreciate everyone's effort on this commission. I appreciate everyone that came on and gave their comments, and just like to remark on what's already been said to some degree. We've heard comments on both ends of the spectrum today. And what I can tell you is traffic safety, which we as a police agency take as the utmost importance, especially in light of the fact of the deadly years that we've had the last couple of years. It's going to take a holistic approach on traffic. There is so much in this report about moving to automated traffic enforcement, but I just want it to be, the data speaks for itself in the sense, and I know Christy is a huge proponent of it. The data and the factors that contribute to fatal accidents are speed, distracted driving, impaired driving, occupant safety. That being said, our automated traffic enforcement, it deals with one component of all that, and that's speed. It's not going to stop distracted driving. It's not going to stop impaired driving. It's not going to stop occupant safety. All behaviors that we need to work on curbing. And that's going to take the efforts of traffic enforcement. I keep hearing, and what's important, and when we talk about data is factual data. We keep hearing about how Montgomery County Police have 100,000 traffic contacts with people a year, which makes it a high volume interaction between the public and the police. I can tell you 2019 was the last time we had numbers anywhere close to that. Last year, we had under 36,000 traffic contacts. So that's a significant decrease. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't say there's not a correlation with a lower level of enforcement with traffic by the police and the fatal collisions that we're seeing. So I think it's important that we all have a stake in this. We all have a portion of this to own, and we need to collaborate together and come up with options that are going to be the most beneficial for the residents of Montgomery County. Impaired driving is a huge problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. And with the change in the marijuana laws, we are going to have a major problem with impaired driving next year. Mark my word. So there's a whole lot that goes into this. I'll just give you an example about the issue we have with impaired driving. In an 8-week period of time, from November 9th to the end of the year, our holiday task force arrested 291 people for driving under the influence. Now, that was 40 officers that took place in that enforcement effort over the course of 8 weeks. That wasn't 40 officers a night. That was 40 officers total. So it just shows you that the importance of officers being out there, making these traffic stops to make the streets of Montgomery County safer. And we can't do that without the police enforcement efforts and that police contact. So that's basically what I wanted to say. I appreciate everyone's time and effort, but just know that this is a priority of Chief Jones as well as myself as the director of the Montgomery County Traffic Operation Division to try to minimize the number of deaths on our road. And it's going to take a number of different enforcement efforts, not just automated traffic enforcement.
Captain Dillman, before I recognize commissioners for some additional comments, I'd just like to say that as I reflect on what we've heard over the last hour and a half, is a public that values traffic enforcement. And I hope that you and the other officers present and the men and women you work with appreciate that that's the consensus of what we're hearing. tonight. That certainly there are and well-deserved statistical reasons for concern about how discretionary enforcement takes place. But as far as traffic enforcement goes, the public wants it and it values it. It values the men and women who do it. And when I hear that in the course of enforcement, 5 cruisers were struck, you know, we recognize how dangerous this work is, and we appreciate the men and women who do it. I'd like to recognize then again, Commissioner Gassner, Commissioner Daphnis, and Commissioner Ekstrand. Did you seek to have additional comments?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Gassner?
Yeah, one quick comment and one quick question. I don't think anybody who support, and if our report suggests that we don't want traffic enforcement, then we've written it badly. I've written it badly. But that's not true. I think the point is that we want, I think we wanted to make sure that the police department is focusing on the most important traffic enforcement, that is preventing injury and death. And the evidence we found that was mixed. We're very happy to see the Central Motors Unit. We're very happy to see data-driven policing. We found holes in different places that seem to indicate that resources could be reallocated effectively. So that's point one. And point two, I'm fascinated to hear that stops have fallen by 2/3. Can you give us a little bit more of an explanation of what's going on?
I think there's a number of things going on. I think we ran into the post George Floyd as well as the pandemic issues. A lot of public scrutiny against the police. We had a lot of time where we didn't interact with the public as much because of the pandemic. And as Chief Jones illustrated, we are about 127 sworn police officers down. That's a significant number down. And our calls for service last year, so in 2021, we had 187,621 calls for service dispatched to our police officers. In 2022, we had 193,305. So we continue to have calls for service. We have a continued amount of officers who or a diminished amount of police force. So our enforcement efforts have significantly decreased as a result of a number of factors. That's why you see a lot of those numbers coming down. When crime is rising or calls for service are rising, depleted workforce, and you have to understand too, part of the central traffic and losing some position in the police department, we went from having motor officers in each of our 6 districts that I think we had 48 officers devoted to traffic enforcement. We're now down to 26 as a central traffic unit. So we have more people or less people devoted to specifically doing centralized traffic enforcement.
Thank you, Captain. Commissioner Daphnis?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that, one of the reasons, aside from, reducing any bias, to move more towards automated enforcement is that it is a way to better focus the human resources that you have. And the thing I would note is that, you talked about the success of the drunk driving or impaired driving task force. I think the interesting thing about that is that those have been shown to be very effective at the national level. And some things that people don't necessarily know is that that's not just a Montgomery County thing. There's actually a nationwide campaign that leads up to most of these sort of task force, kind of operations. I think by pairing some of your special enforcement details or task force type scenarios with some of that education in that holistic way, and increasing automated enforcement, you can both use the human resources that you have in a better way and actually start to change behavior, because they have shown that those, DUI checkpoints or, task force type models, when paired with education, is super effective.
Thank you, Commissioner Daphnis.